Okay, guys, here we go. So we have the National Toxicology Program's report that went out. So those who may not be familiar, the National Toxicology Program is under HHS. A lot of people talk about this report because of the federal court case against the EPA. Now, this study is not, or report rather, it is not the only evidence of harm regarding fluoride. There's a mountain of evidence. There's now more evidence that fluoride harms you and harms the brain than there is of lead. And we all know that lead is harmful. It damages your brain, and fluoride damages your brain as well. And there's more evidence that fluoride damages your brain than there is of lead damaging your brain, to kind of put that in perspective. So why is this National Toxicology Program report talked about so much? Well, during the trial against the EPA, the report was in the report was to be used as evidence of harm, and the government tried to thwart the judge's ability to read this report. There was a lot of shenanigans, and I think this article will help explain what's going on. So if you're having conversations with other people, you'll be able to explain the truth. Okay, so with that being said, let's just get into the report, because I think it'll become a lot clearer. Here we go. All right, the National Toxicology Program's fluoride report raises concerns about fluoride's neurotoxic effects on the brain and IQ. Again, there's a lot of evidence. The National Toxicology Program's report is not the be-all and end-all. Okay, it's just, again, they were trying to prevent the judge from seeing the recent report. The government, that is, try to prevent the judge from seeing the report. Okay, so let's start reading. We've got right here, safety advocates are calling for officials to take immediate action to protect public health and issue a ban on public water fluoridation. Forgive me, guys. Spring, Texas, United States, April 11th, 2023. And they cite this: the International Academy of Biological Dentistry and Medicine is raising awareness that fluoride exposure has been found to cause neurodevelopmental and cognitive health effects by the National Toxicology Program.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Fluoride exposure has been found to cause neurodevelopmental and cognitive health effects by the National Toxicology Program. The NTP was forced to release a draft of its long-awaited fluoride report that was initially completed in May of 2022. But the CDC and HHS worked behind the scenes to suppress its release. Okay? So they colluded in order to try to prevent the judge from seeing this report. All right, let's start right here. The report underscores the urgent need to immediately ban water fluoridation to protect the health and well-being of all Americans. And we go over to here. Doesn't want to highlight properly. So here we are, guys. A judge subpoenaed the NTP to make the report public during an ongoing lawsuit filed by several environmental and health advocacy groups who have long expressed concerns about the safety of fluoride, which is added to drinking water in many communities across the United States. The NTP report, sorry guys, it just doesn't want to highlight properly. The NTP's report provides new evidence to support these concerns and raises questions about the long-term negative health effects of fluoride exposure. The NTP has repeatedly come out and said that fluoride is a cognitive neurodevelopmental hazard to humans. This is our own government admitting this, okay? All right, here we go. According to the NTP's report, 52 out of the 55 studies found a decrease in children's IQ with increased fluoride exposure. The report's meta-analysis supports the results of previous studies and extends them by including newer, more precise studies. The data confirms a consistent inverse association between fluoride exposure and IQ, meaning the NTP found that 52 out of the 55 studies found that there is a decrease in children's IQ with an increase of fluoride exposure. In other words, the more that the child is exposed to fluoride, the lower the child's IQ will be, okay, to put that plainly. And this doesn't like to highlight properly, so here we are right here. When asked if there is a safe fluoride dose, NTP replied that they discovered no obvious threshold for either total fluoride exposure or water fluoride exposure in their meta-analysis. NTP referred to a graph in the report which depicts a sharp decline in IQ of roughly 7 points across a fluoride range of 0.2 to 1.5 milligrams per liter. Okay, let me help you. Let me put this in perspective. So the so-called optimal level of fluoride is 0.7 parts per million. Now in Henrico, Virginia, the amount of fluoride that they're adding into the water, they try to keep it at 0.7 parts per million. But when I actually looked at how much fluoride is being put into the water every day, I saw that it varied drastically from, I think it was like 0.2 parts per million, and it was when I got my water tested, it was at 0.9 parts per million. So they can't drug you at a precise level. So 0.7, right, is the so-called optimal level of fluoride. And according to our own government, that from 0.2 to 1.5, there is a sharp decline of roughly 7 IQ points across a fluoride range, again, of 0.2 to 1.5. This is significant, okay? So our government knows that there's harm, all right? And Henrico County knows that there's harm, and yet they continue to put this in our drinking water, a drug that is harming us, that is harming your children. This is intentional. Okay, there is no justification to drug people without their consent. Even if it prevented you from having all cavities, the government has no right to drug you without your consent. They should not be making the decision that we think we want to drug you to prevent cavities, and we've decided that we're going to prevent cavities and at the same time harm your brain. Right? At the same time, harm your thyroid. At the same time, harm your bones. The Henrico County needs to get out of the business of practicing medicine without a license. This is a violation of informed consent, and it's a violation of the Nuremberg Code. All right. Anyway, let's get back to this. We're right here. So NTP's meta-analysis further elaborates on the impact that loss of IQ would have on our population, okay? So when we're dumbing down the population, what's the consequence of that? Research on other neurotoxicants have shown that subtle shifts in IQ at the population level can have a profound impact A 5-point decrease in a population's IQ would nearly double the number of people classified as intellectually disabled. Holy cow. Every time I read this is incredible. So take this in perspective of Henrico. So Henrico is deliberately drugging us with hydrofluorosilicic acid. This is a poison. Remember, on the package, it says danger, toxic by ingestion. So they're putting chemicals into the water. You can call it a chemical, you can call it a drug, you can call it an additive, you can call it a contaminant, okay? So they're putting this into the drinking water, Henrico County, and they are nearly doubling the number of people classified as intellectually disabled. You've got no right to do this. Ethically speaking, what are you doing? You come across looking like monsters. Okay, let's continue. The history of water fluoridation and new research finding fluoride is toxic to the developing brain is covered in this video. The impact of fluoride on the developing brain. I haven't looked at that video. I'll put a link below to this article. So the impact of fluoride on developing brain, produced by Little Things Matter, an organization dedicated to raising awareness of the environmental risks and to provide actionable steps to empower families. Okay, I'll have to check out that video. The release of the National Toxicology Program's report is a significant development in the ongoing debate about the safety of fluoride, and advocates are calling for officials to take immediate action to protect public health and issue a ban on public water fluoridation. Again, I've been trying to get Henrico to ban this. Because there's no ordinance. As far as I can tell, they're acting outside of their authority. Okay, this is a problem. You're acting under color of law. You don't have the authority to do this. You don't have the authority to harm people. This is willful disregard. Okay, that's what this is. Or you could say gross negligence. So let's continue. We have the National Toxicology Program's report on fluoride is a major victory for public health and transparency, said Teresa Scott, president of the International Academy of Biological Dentistry and Medicine. For too long, communities across the country have been forced to ingest a neurotoxic chemical without their knowledge or consent. The report underscores the urgent need to immediately ban water fluoridation to protect the health and well-being of all Americans. And Henrico could do this today if they felt like it, okay? But instead, they want to say, oh, we're not the ones making the decision. We're not the ones responsible. It's big bad VDH that's forcing us, and that is a lie. You have the option in Henrico, okay? This is an optional activity. And you're setting yourselves up for litigation later on down the road. Like I've mentioned in the past, historically, when people have challenged the harms of fluoride coming from their city or county, the judges have ruled in favor of the fluoride folks, right? But now we have a situation where we have our own government saying that this is harmful to humans. Okay, so that's a game changer. You have the case against the EPA, that's a game changer. And then you have the Loper Bright case, that's a game changer. So there's a lot of lawsuits that are coming out because of this Loper Bright case. So, again, before judges would say, well, if the government says it's good, then, then I'm going to rule in favor of the government, and they wouldn't look at the science. Now they're going to look at the science. So this could come before a judge, and the judge, it will be forced to look at the science, and the science shows this is harmful. And then the judge would say this is harmful, and yet the county was deliberately harming the children. What type of justification is that? There's no justification in all of the land to drug people against their will and to deliberately harm people against their will. Okay? To me, this seems like battery. I don't know how else to put it. Okay. Anyway, I digress. So I would like to talk about the fact that the EPA has appealed this. Now, the federal ruling. It would appear, based on the chatter that I'm hearing that's going on inside the government, that the EPA is not actually going to continue to pursue this. Now, I looked at why is the EPA appealing this? Like, what do they say is the problem? And this is corrupt. Let me explain. So, like I mentioned, there was the National Toxicology Program's report, and the federal judge wanted to, read that report, this draft that was coming out. And what happened was the government colluded with one another in order to prevent that report from coming out. So that report was poised to come out, no problem. Judge reads it, rules, the end. But the government colluded, the EPA colluded with other people in the government to try to prevent the judge from seeing it. Now, the EPA in their appeal says, well, we're appealing this because we don't think the judge should have ever been able to look at that report. Like, essentially saying, like, the judge, we should be allowed to collude with one another and prevent the judge from seeing it. And because the judge waited to see it and realized what was going on, then, like, we want to appeal it. Essentially, we don't think it's fair that we didn't get away with our corrupt actions. The EPA is not saying, there's evidence that all of this is wrong. No, the EPA acknowledges that this is harmful. The EPA acknowledges that this is damaging children's brains. They're not debating that. That's not what is in dispute in the appeal. The reason why they're appealing is because they say, well, it's not fair that the judge, stalled the trial so he could look at the HHS's National Toxicology Program's draft report. Like, what are we doing? This is so corrupt. So, in my opinion, it doesn't matter, what happens with this EPA. The report is a report. We all know it's harmful. Get it out of the water. All right, let me show you a clip from a deposition. This is going to blow your mind. So let me show you.
Did you give any consideration as to what an appropriate benchmark MOE should be for fluoride neurotoxicity?
Yeah, I did. Given that the critical studies.
Okay, guys, he's asking, what is the benchmark for the margin of safety? Meaning, so the National Toxicology Program, EPA acknowledged that absolutely at 1.5 parts per million, it is scrambling your brain. Okay, so they were willing to admit that. Now, the evidence shows it scrambles your brain at lower levels, but the EPA was like, okay, well, we're willing to accept that it's at 1.5 parts per million, it scrambles the brain. Okay, now currently the EPA will allow up to 4 parts per million to damage your brain. Okay, they'll allow that in the water. And in the case of Richmond, over a month's worth of fluoride went into the drinking water in one day, which pushed it up to, when I did the math, it was as high as over 100 parts per million. And Richmond's own data shows that it was at I believe 32 parts per million, to put that into perspective. So now the EPA is saying, this is where we are, that the harms of fluoride, artificial fluoridation, putting fluoride in the drinking water, is at 1.5 parts per million. And so if you acknowledge that that is where absolute harms are, you have to have a margin of safety, right? You have to have a buffer. So Michael Conant is asking this witness, this is EPA's witness on risk assessment in the fluoride trial, Dr. Stanley Barone. Okay, so Conant is asking Barone, what is the margin of safety? You understand that 1.5 parts per million is harmful. So what's the buffer? What's the margin of safety? And he's going to go on to explain that the margin of safety should be at minimum a factor of 10, which would mean it would bring it down. The margin of safety would come down from, you have 1.5, and that the margin of safety should be all the way down to 0.15 parts per million. Okay, so that's what's going on here. Let me start over for you guys.
Did you give any consideration as to what an appropriate benchmark MOE should be for fluoride neurotoxicity?
Yeah, I did. Given that the critical studies in question are probably epidemiological studies, human studies, uncertainty factor of 10, which is appropriate for all life stages, inclusive of all life stages and vulnerabilities at face value.
When he says all life stages, he's talking about, pregnant women and babies. So you need to bring it down to a factor of 10, which would be 0.15 in order to protect, pregnant women, the unborn child, babies, people with kidney damage, elderly people, the list. So all stages of life is what he's saying.
Would be the benchmark MOE.
Okay. Would that apply whether we used a BMCL, a low L, or a no L?
It would apply to all of them. Whether we're using a low L or no L, that would be potentially another uncertainty factor.
When it comes to assessing the hazards and risks of fluoride, do you think EPA should use health protective assumptions, or should EPA not use health protective assumptions?
So again, if you're using a margin of exposure approach for a risk-based analysis, and default uncertainty factor for human variability would definitely come into play.
Okay, and you've actually already testified to this today, that you do think the default uncertainty factor for intraspecies variability should be applied to the fluoride neurotoxicity assessment.
I think, in your words, asked and answered.
Do you think EPA should use a more stringent standard for assessing the hazard and risk of fluoride than EPA has used for other existing chemicals under TSCA?
Objection.
Again, I don't know what the justification for that would be.
Okay, so essentially, let's get out of this. Okay, so essentially, one of the questions I was asked too, at what level does ingesting water, fluoridated water, become toxic, right? So at what level, where does it go from safe to dangerous? What level is that? And they say they don't know, right? Because the data shows that down to 0.2 parts per million, there's harm. So you would have to, start doing studies to see, if 0.0 5 parts per million, does that cause harm? I mean, this is so ridiculous. This is like saying, let's try to figure out where, like if you want lead, you're going to put some lead in somebody's water. Lead is harmful, but the government's like really, 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 really wants to know, we want to put this in the drinking water. And so, what level does, what amount of lead can we put in the water where it all of a sudden becomes safe? There is no level, right? Or what level can you put mercury in the water or, in this case, fluoride. Like, a neurotoxin is a neurotoxin. What are you doing? Hydrofluorosilicic acid is not a nutrient. Okay, this is not a nutrient. I don't know how many times I can say this. So why are you trying to figure out what levels you can put a poison in the drinking water where, all of a sudden it's not going to harm you? So far, that level doesn't exist. So you've got to operate by the precautionary principle. You're going out of your way to add a poison into the water. This is criminal, in my opinion. It really, really is. I don't know how else to put it. You should not be putting poisons in the drinking water because it violates informed consent. Okay? This is very inappropriate. You should not be using the waterworks to deliver medical treatments. So that's all for today. I hope you like this video. I know I kind of ranted a little bit, but it's just so exhausting, okay? The amount of evidence that we have right now that shows that this is harmful is extraordinary, and it's so disgusting to me that the onus has been on the citizens, people like me, to prove to the county of Henrico that this is dangerous and reckless, right? The Henrico County should never have put the fluoride in the drinking water until they absolutely know it's safe. They never did that. Instead, they're putting the burden of proof on me to prove that this is harmful. So what else are they going to dump into the water that's killing us and then say, well, we're going to just dump this into the water until you can prove that it's harming you? What are you doing? I ask you, what are you doing? What is the justification? There is none. It's completely unethical and barbaric. So if you are somebody like me who's dissatisfied with all of this government corruption, then do something about it. Show up at a board of supervisors meeting and tell them to stop putting poisons in the drinking water. Call them, show up, do something. Email them. You could send an email to the county. You could make a phone call to the county. Do not think that your voice does not matter. They want you to think that your voice doesn't matter, so then you never try, right? That's how they operate. Your voice does matter. You can do this, okay? The county can do the right thing. The county can be a beacon of light and stop the fluoride and cause a massive domino effect. What's holding them back? Is Virginia Health Catalyst, donating money to the Board of Supervisors to help them get reelected? Is CDC, somehow getting money, to them? Or perhaps VDH? I don't exactly know how it works with this government corruption and, giving money to politicians in order to promote this, but by God, I can figure it out. I will follow the money and see what is going on, because that is the only thing that makes sense in this situation. Either the county is being bribed, blackmailed, paid off, or they're just, perhaps because they know what's going on, they're just psychopaths, right? Because the action of a psychopath is you harm people and you don't care, right? So that would make you a psychopath. You're deliberately harming people and you do not care, right? Anyway, I've got another video I've got to work on. So it's just so exhausting. Help out, guys. Do something about it. Leave a comment below. Give a thumbs up. Share this video if you are dissatisfied with what's going on. We have got to stop this government corruption. I'm so tired of the lies and the manipulation and the deceitfulness of our government. We have got to put them in check. We are the people. The citizens are responsible for keeping the government in check, and we are falling asleep, and everybody thinks that it doesn't matter. They're trying to make you think that you're a victim and there's nothing you can do about it, when in fact there is something you can do about it. Send an email, make a phone call. You can show up at a board of supervisors meeting and speak during public comment period. If you want, you can even speak during public comment period through WebEx, right? So you can stay at home and speak to them. In City of Richmond, you can even call in and speak. You could probably do that too in Henrico, but I've never checked in that, but I don't see why you couldn't. Anyway, let's do something about it, right? Nothing is ever going to change unless we make it change. And, you know, the people who have forced medications on the public have never been on the right side of history. I mean, never, ever. All right, that's it. I better take a walk. I get too riled up. I'm like Del Bigtree, you know. Del Bigtree just goes off on a tangent and you gotta rein it in. So, all right, everyone. See you later. See you next time. The next video that I am gonna do, I'm gonna show you how Henrico got bamboozled into putting fluoride into the drinking water to begin with. I've been working on kind of like a PowerPoint presentation that would be visually interesting and help explain kind of, you know, why did they start putting fluoride into the drinking water and what is holding them back right now. They, from my understanding, the reason why they don't want to go on record promoting fluoride or being against fluoride is they're like, politically, we don't know which way the wind is gonna blow, and we don't want to be on record, you know, taking a position because it might harm us in the future, right? They're responsible. They're the ones making this decision, and they don't want to come out with it. If they think fluoride is so great, then publicly say that it's so great. But they don't want to do that, which indicates to me that there's a level of shame going on within them. And that's why they refuse to take responsibility for the chemicals in the drinking water, hydrofluorosilicic acid in the drinking water. They do not want to take responsibility, and they do not want to show the public that they have put this in the drinking water without so much as a vote. Okay? So, that's it. I got to work on the next video. See ya. Bye, guys. Got to take a walk.